Welcome to Chamber Chat. I am John Tayer, and I welcome you to another chance that we have bi-weekly to talk with our Boulder Chamber members and the Boulder community, business community at large, about the things that we're doing here at the Boulder Chamber to support your business and to lift our economy, and also an opportunity to chat with some of the leaders in our community who are helping to support our economic interests, to lift our community, and to make sure that we get through this COVID-19 crisis as smoothly as possible. And today we're fortunate to have a very special guest, Mayor Pro Tem Bob Yates. But before I get a chance to chat with Bob, I wanted to share with you a couple things that are happening here at the Boulder Chamber. So first of all, a new date that we have for our Boulder Young Professionals Lunch and Learn series event. That's going to be Tuesday, August 11th from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. And the topic is how to negotiate your salary effectively. So whether you're looking for a new job, you want to get a raise or promotion, the skills of being able to advocate for yourself are critical. So this is a great opportunity for all of us to learn and have a little lunch together over Zoom. So make sure to register online at boulderchamber.com. And another event that we have coming up is our Business Women's Leadership Group meeting, which is on August 12th at 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. And the topic is appropriately overwhelmed to energized. And I just imagine just a lot of leaders out there, you're dealing with this crisis environment and it can feel overwhelming. So how do we turn that around and make you feel energized? Well, come to learn this session, and you'll learn how to use physical cues to understand emotions, ask key questions to gain clarity in moments of overwhelm, connect our energy to our personal genius. I'm assuming I have any personal genius. Create capacity in our lives through intention and purpose. So don't miss this excellent learning experience, our BWLG, Boulder Women's Leadership Group meeting. That's on August 12th. Again, register at boulderchamber.com. And then finally, have you filled out your 2020 census? We want to get to 100% responses. And so the Boulder Chamber is going to give you a little incentive. We're going to be donating a free entrepreneurial membership to all of you who fill out your census by September 9, 2020. So just check out on the screen below the information on how you can register for that free membership. But just make sure to fill out that census. It's so important to making sure that we get all the funding that we need to support our community from the federal government. Very critical. Okay, so enough for me. It's our chance now to chat with my good friend, Bob Yates. He is Mayor Pro Tem for the city of Boulder and was first elected in 2015 and then re-elected last year after a distinguished career as a lawyer and then working for level 3 in the United States, but then also internationally. But now he's had the experience of working on city council, and I imagine I've talked with Bob before. I mean, nobody can anticipate the kinds of experience that he's dealing with here under the COVID-19 circumstances. And so I just wanted to ask Bob, we have this just challenge to our economy, to our community. So what focus do you have for the City of Boulder's response efforts under these circumstances?
Well, thanks, John. I appreciate the question, and I appreciate you having me. In every crisis, you learn things, right? You learn things about yourself, you learn things about your community, you learn things about the organization you're affiliated with. And this crisis has certainly been no exception. I think we've all learned things as a community, and I think I'm speaking for a lot of us to express my pride over how our community has reacted to this crisis. I want to mention some lessons that we've learned, and I've certainly learned, and I think the community has learned in this crisis. I wrote about these in a newsletter I wrote recently, and I want to just maybe kind of walk through them real quickly because I think they'll resonate with you and your members. One lesson that I think we all learned is how quickly our local government can respond. We saw that in the 2013 flood. And we've certainly seen it in this COVID crisis. Going back to mid-March when things were seemingly falling apart, our city manager and our city council and our city staff really came together and acted very, very quickly in partnership with Boulder Community Hospital, with Boulder Public Health, and with our business community to ensure that our community members had the protections they needed, had the information they needed, and were well served. There was a lot of confusion, you might remember, in those early days in mid-March. And I'm really proud of the fact that our city government stepped up and didn't panic and took the steps necessary to kind of secure things. Another lesson that we've learned along the way is how important communication is. It's been just really, really essential to let our community know these are confusing times, these are distressing times. And I think that we have learned that it's so, so important for local government to be a trusted source of information. And so we very quickly in the city government put up a web page, filled it with lots of information, organized it in a way that people could find what they needed, whether it was what do I do if I'm facing an eviction, or should I wear a mask, or how many people are sick, or how do I keep my family safe, or what's going on with the schools. All of that information was made available through the city. And we saw our hits to the website, the city website, just grow dramatically, tens of thousands of hits per week, because people quickly learned that the city was a trusted source of information. Another lesson that I think is really important, John, is how strong this community is in helping people with need. It quickly became apparent that there were people who were losing their jobs, who risked losing their houses or their businesses or being evicted, and our really strong safety net really came into play very quickly. Organizations like EFA and the Community Foundation, but also the Boulder Chamber, Downtown Boulder Partnership, the school district, everyone came together and identified those people who were hurting most. The generosity was absolutely astounding. People in our community who have wealth opened their pocketbooks and made generous contributions over and over again to make sure the people in our community who were most in need or most at risk were fully protected. I'm really proud of that. Another lesson that I learned along the way is how people will follow public guidance. I'm actually pretty surprised. Who would have thought 6 months ago that we would all be walking around wearing masks? I mean, we Americans tend to be a pretty independent lot. But I think that once people understood the importance of distancing, the importance of mask wearing, the importance of keeping gatherings to very small groups, we see compliance being very, very high. Boulder County Public Health actually published a study, which they shared with the City Council this week, where they actually sat in different locations in different cities throughout the county. And Boulder, believe it or not, had the highest usage of masks of all the cities in the county. I'm really proud of the fact that while we certainly see people from time to time who forget about wearing masks, our mask compliance is very high in Boulder City compared to the other cities in the county. Well, one other lesson that we learned, and I think we all knew this inherently, but it became pretty obvious when the crisis hit, is how integrally tied business is to local government and vice versa. Local government is largely funded by sales tax. And when sales tax dries up because people aren't shopping or going to the grocery or going to the restaurants or going to hotels, our sales tax dries up, and our ability to pay for the fundamental services that the city provides, whether it's transportation or human services or parks or recreation or open space, really becomes at peril. And so we've seen our city budget 1/7 lost. 1/7 of our city budget will be lost this year, which means that we can provide about 1/7 less or fewer services than we typically do. And so it's really focused us to triage, to focus on priorities. What does the community need most? Public safety and health obviously come to the top of the list. And other things which are nice to haves are things that we've had to dial back a little bit. It makes us sad to do that. We have great programs around recreation, around art, our libraries. Those are all really important services. We also recognize that those are things that we can probably reduce a bit. It makes us all sad to do that, but we need to focus primarily on public safety and health. We will resume those services, obviously, as the finances allow. And then finally, an important lesson that I learned is how adaptive and innovative our community is. When the chips were down, we all pulled together and said, okay, that's a challenge, we can fix that. So when restaurants couldn't open the way they normally did, we said, let's close Pearl Street and put tables out on the street. It's summertime, let's enjoy it. Our nonprofit organizations stepped up and delivered Chromebooks to students who were learning from home. We just, in so many ways, even our arts community came together and said, let's raise some money and put local artists to work and painting murals in neighborhoods. And so I think, I'm really proud that this is a smart, creative, hardworking community. And when we needed people to step up, they did. I'll just close by saying that again, those are lessons that I published in my newsletter, and a couple of Boy Scouts got a hold of that, and they were working on their citizenship merit badge. And so they interviewed me by Zoom a few days ago, and they asked me, okay, Bob, we saw your 6 lessons. What do you think is the most important of those? And for me, the most important one is how our community came together to help those in greatest need. And so I'm really proud of this community. We are going to get through this together. And this has been a very satisfying experience. As sad as it has been, I'm really, really proud of Boulder.
Well, I'd say for sure, Bob, you deserve a merit badge, because I've really appreciated the collaboration that we've had with you and with our city leadership to recognize the needs of our businesses and to collaborate on efforts to help lift them and to support them during a very difficult time. So I thank you, and I'm also share that pride that you have in how the community comes together around these issues. So let me just change the subject a little bit, and something that you've been very deeply involved in, and that is that the city has been involved for over a decade in an exploration of potentially breaking with our energy provider, electric energy provider, Xcel, and considering municipalizing our electric system. So now we have just recently heard that we have come to a potential settlement agreement with Xcel that would allow us to move forward more as partners with Xcel in meeting our community's clean energy and carbon reduction goals. I can just say that the Boulder Chamber has always been a supporter of that type of approach to meeting our community's goals. But I know that you and Mayor Sam Weaver were intimately involved in developing that agreement. So I just wonder if you could just tell us, well, how did that come together? And why do you feel, you and Mayor Weaver feel that this is something that is worthy of consideration by our community?
Well, thanks, John. I think to reflect on where we are in municipalization, I think it's important for us to wind back the clock and go back to 2010 when this started a decade ago. Remind ourselves what our goals were at that time. And there were 2 goals at the time. One was to increase renewables so that we could play our part in climate action. And the second is the possibility of having greater local control over our electric distribution system. Those were both great goals, and I think many in our community supported it. Over the intervening decade, 2 big things happened, one bad and one good. On the bad side, it turns out that it's quite a bit harder than you might think to municipalize, to take away the local distribution network that Xcel has been running here for nearly 100 years. Needless to say, they weren't delighted about losing their Boulder customers or the network they had built here, and they fought us every step of the way. And there's a lot of legal stuff and a lot of financial stuff and engineering stuff that comes into play. And it became immensely complicated, became immensely contentious, it became immensely expensive. And over the course of 10 years, we managed to spend about $25 million on this endeavor. So that's not a good thing, and we're still quite a long ways away from completing it if we ever do. So that's the bad news. The good news is some really cool stuff has happened along the way. First of all, Xcel has embraced renewables. They've done that both because I think they're a responsible company, but also because renewables, quite frankly, have become significantly cheaper than oil and gas, which was traditionally used to generate electricity. So even if they weren't a green company, they have some really good motivation to convert to solar and wind as quickly as possible, and that's a good thing. The second good thing that happened very recently, about 2 years ago, is our state legislature stepped up and said, you know what, all the power providers in the state, whether it's Xcel or the other ones, need to get to renewables even faster than the economics dictate. And they imposed a law that said by 2030, there needs to be a reduction in carbon emissions by 80% in the electric sector. Now, the good news is that Xcel was already well on the way towards that, so it won't be a heavy lift for them. But I think those 2 things combined cause us to kind of take a step back and say, geez, the goals that we set for ourselves in 2010, do they still apply here in light of that information? John Maynard Keynes, the famous economist, said, when facts change, I change my mind. And I think in the intervening decade, as good as municipalization may have sounded to some in our community, the facts have changed. And I think mature people will change their mind. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of humility to change your view. But I have seen many, many emails from constituents in the past few weeks who say, I was in favor of this all along, but you know what? I'm not so sure it's necessary any longer. I think the facts have changed, and I am mature enough to change my views on this. And so it was the responsibility of the city council to sit down with Xcel and say, is there a way we can work together towards a common goal of renewable energy and local control? And the answer turned out to be yes. And so Sam Weaver, our mayor, and I, and Sam and I actually have very different views of municipalization through the years. Sam has been a very vigorous proponent of that, which I respect. I've been an opponent. And so I think we were the logical people to sit down on behalf of our city council with Xcel and understand, is there a deal to be had here that achieves our common goals? And we've spent the last 3 or 4 months talking with them about that. And we put together a proposal that's now before the city council that I think is really, really pretty cool. It gets us to 100% renewable energy, which is what our city has always tried to achieve. It provides us greater local control. It undergrounds a lot of our wires that are up in the air that are subject to wind and ice and snow, and will allow those to be put underground where we'll have a more reliable network. But it also does allow us to resume municipalization at several stages over the next several years if we find that this new partnership is not quite working out the way we hope. It's almost like a prenuptial agreement where we think we want to get hitched, but we also want to make sure that if for some reason things don't go as well as we think they might in 2020, we have an opportunity to preserve our rights to exit that relationship and get back to where we are today. And so part of the deal is over the next 8 years, there are 4 opportunities for Boulder to exit the franchise and to resume municipalization if that's what the community wants. And the final thing I'll say is one thing that regardless of how one feels about municipalization, one thing that I think this city council and prior city councils over the last 10 years has done a good job is checking in with the community every few years. Municipalization started in 2010 with a vote of the people. There was a vote in 2011, in 2013, in 2014, in 2015, in 2017. So every 2 or 3 years, we check in with the community and say, is this something you still want to do? Now, the last time we checked in was in 2017, and by a 52-48 margin, the voters said, yeah, keep going. But many of those things I just described, as far as both the bad news and the good news, have happened since 2017. It's been 3 years since we checked into the voters. And I think it's the responsibility of city council to present this proposal to the voters and give the voters an opportunity to say, is this good enough? Is this what we want to do? Or do we want to continue with municipalization? It's all about democracy. It's all about letting the people choose. And so later this month, council will decide whether to put this on the ballot. I hope they will. And I hope the community will take a serious look at this proposal and compare it to our alternative. So that's I could talk about this for a long time, and I already have, but it's a fascinating topic, and I hope that this vote, rather than dividing the community, will bring us together and reflect on our common goals.
Yeah, well, it's a wonderful development, Bob. And as I mentioned, I mean, this is the type of progress that the Chamber has championed for quite some time. I will note that I probably will stop calling it a settlement agreement and refer to it as a prenup agreement. So that's support your.
I prefer partnership. It's a partnering arrangement. As a matter of fact, one of the principal documents in the settlement is called a partnership agreement, and it truly is a partnership.
Well, I love it, and I applaud you and Mayor Weaver for working together from different perspectives on the issue to arrive at this opportunity for us to move forward in partnership with Xcel. So listen, Bob, now I'm going to get a little bit personal with you. And I will say this, that I followed your campaigns, your first campaign and then your one this last year running for office. And I didn't see anywhere on your platform addressing a pandemic environment condition. And so, here we are dealing with this crisis situation on top of so many other heady issues that you face at the council dais. And so I just ask you, can you just reflect for us, what is it like to work in this environment? And how, pray tell, do you keep yourself sane?
Well, first of all, no one's ever accused me of being sane. So the premise of your question is faulty. So maybe I should just stop there. You're right. I didn't put in my campaign how I would deal with the crisis. I probably should have reflected on that, and here we are. I wouldn't have raised my hand to do this. This is largely a volunteer effort, and I love my job. But I wouldn't have done this if it weren't for the fact that we have a really, really great city staff. I think we all look at opportunities, as volunteers to join nonprofit boards or other type of organizations with our church or schools or nonprofits. And the first thing we usually do when we're considering joining an organization is how strong is the leadership? How strong is the executive director or the staff that is supporting that organization? And for me, that was a no-brainer because I've known Jane Brodigam, the city manager, for many years, long before I ran for council, and her staff. And I knew the city was very well run and very well managed. So for me, it was an easy decision to run for council in 2015 and then to seek re-election in 2019 because they do all the hard work and they make us look good. It's the best job ever. And so through this crisis, I think that has really been tested and proven. I can't say enough about Jane and her leadership and about the leadership of our city departments. They've really stepped up. No one has lost a grip. No one has become unhinged. Rather, they've gone in the opposite direction, which is they've shown maturity and leadership, and they've really gotten our community through for all the reasons I said at the beginning of this discussion. And so for me, it's been actually easy. There's been more work, obviously. There's been different work than any of us anticipated. But I have to say that all the credit goes to our city staff. I'm brokenhearted that our wonderful city manager is now retiring after 12 years. It's a retirement that she very well deserves, and we all wish her well. It was not surprising that she wanted to retire. I think she's reaching that age and that level in her career, but by the same token, it's highly regretted, and we're going to miss her, and it's going to be very, very difficult to replace her. So I just want to extend a shout out to Jane for her decade of service to our community. And I don't think we could have gotten through this COVID crisis without her.
Well, Bob, I have to also credit you absolutely for your commitment to our community. I reflect on just one of the early days when we met and you had retired early from your career at level 3 and said, I'm going to dedicate myself to community work. And we are so fortunate to have your services in our community. So thank you so much for all of that great work and for being with us on Chamber Chat.
It was my pleasure, John. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. So just a reminder to our audience, at the Boulder Chamber, business is happening safely. So we're here to serve you, make sure we are addressing any need that you have. We want to make sure that you understand that we're committed during this very difficult time to make sure that we sustain your business and lift our economy. And one of the best ways we can all do that and help to get us through this crisis is to act responsibly in our business activities. So make sure to wear that mask, and I'll see you in a couple weeks on Chamber Chat.